Good afternoon. Hello to everybody joining us at this panel. My name is Roman Globoker. I'm professor of moral theology at the Faculty of Theology, University of Ljubljana, and I will be moderating this panel entitled Spirituality, Emotions, and the Other in the Digital Age. Our panel will present the findings of our researchers in the project Theology and Digitalization, Anthropological and Ethical Challenges, which is founded by the Slovenian Research and Innovation Agency, and the head of our research group is Professor Bojan Žalec. The participants are from the Faculty of Theology, University of Ljubljana, and the Koper Science and Research Center. The focus of our research is on how the process of digitalization is changing our view of the world, of humanity, of our interpersonal relationship, also our spirituality and religious life. First, I would like to apologize on behalf of Professor Ivan Platoniak, who is unable to participate in our panel due to the health issues. Our first speaker is Jonas Miklaučič, a junior researcher in the field of artificial intelligence and ethics. In 2024, he earned his doctorate from the Faculty of Theology in the field of philosophy. The title of his dissertation is Transparency and Ethics of Algorithmic Decision-Making Systems. Please, dear Jonas, take the floor and begin your presentation.
Thank you very much, Roman. I hope you can all hear me well. For now, I will take that as yes. Here we go. Presentation works in full screen mode, right? Okay, so thank you very much, Roman, for your very kind words. As you said, quite a lot of presenters are from the project that Bojan Žalec is head of. So some of you might have heard me talk on this topic before, but this is like a shorter, perhaps, version of it. The topic of my presentation is Escape into the Real, Virtuality and Religious Experience. And starting point for my presentation, or rather paper, is a quote from American musician and poet Tom Waits. He famously said in some talk show interview that reality is for people who can't face drugs. And the line is, of course, humorous because it reverses the usual logic of escapism. We normally imagine reality as what we flee through intoxication, fantasy, or perhaps virtual worlds. Waits suggests the opposite. Reality itself becomes the safer fallback for those who cannot endure intensity of intoxication. Reality is thus no longer what we escape from, but what we retreat to. And in this very sense, I want to perhaps suggest a new quote. Reality is for people who can't face virtuality. This too sounds, of course, amusing at first, but it captures something important about our contemporary condition. In the late 20th century, virtuality was often imagined as an escape from the burdens of the real world. Digital spaces promised experimentation, anonymity, and freedom from consequences. Sherry Turkle, famously in The Life on the Screen, described online life as a laboratory of identity, while Jean Baudrillard, for example, read virtuality as a hyper simulation detached from messy reference. And today, however, it seems that we are witnessing a reversal. Contemporary culture speaks less of escaping into virtuality and more of escaping from it. We hear terms such as digital detox, offline retreats, analog living, slow technology, disconnect to reconnect, and we even sometimes hear about so-called digital fasting. These phrases mark a broader desire to step away from digital life and return to something felt to be more grounding. But what we are escaping from. It seems that not from something unreal. On the contrary, digital life has become perhaps too real, too responsive, too present, too consequential. Precisely this hyperreality makes it exhausting. Virtuality today is perhaps, or can be, characterized by excessive responsiveness. So every digital action invites immediate reaction with likes, comments, shares, and produces an endless loop of validation and surveillance. It is also characterized by constant presence. Digital life is always within us, on our wrists, in our pockets, in the background of every moment. Also, perpetual performativity. Even intimate gestures become public facing. Online life is never free of spectacle. And of course, real life consequences. Digital actions shape employment, relationships, mental health, and self image. One could also list among these characteristics permanence of memory. The virtual never quite forgets. The digital past remains available and active in the present. This is also why contemporary research on social media and anxiety matters. It confirms that digital hyperconnectivity is not a secondary illusion, but a real psychological burden. Where, then, do we escape to? We say that towards reality, which can be characterized as nature, silence, slowness, embodied presence, and so forth. But this reality is no longer simply outside the digital. It is already filtered through images, expectations, and imaginaries shaped online. For many younger people, there is no living memory of a world untouched by the internet and smartphones. Even the desire for authentic reality is mediated in advance by images, influencer narratives, and social media scripts. What we seek is therefore not a pure return to reality, but a different mode of experiencing it. We do not escape virtuality cleanly. We often even documented the escape through the same channels from which we fled, as it is shown on this particular slide. And when we look closely at what people seek and escape virtuality for, the desired qualities become surprisingly clear. It is often said that people seek silence, relief from notifications, messages, and the constant digital chatter. We seek solitude, a space in which one no longer performs for an audience or waits for validation. We seek meaning, experiences that feel intrinsically valuable rather than optimized, efficient, or merely consumable. We perhaps seek non-responsiveness in environments that do not instantly answer our every action, allowing us simply to be. We seek withdrawal from productivity, moments without measurable goals, utility, or obligations to produce, timelessness, intervals in which deadlines, updates, and fear of missing out fall silent, and even, perhaps, interior depth, experiences that are not documented, not shared, and not externally validated. These desires seem, of course, contemporary and secular to some extent, yet we can perhaps see something more appears. All these characteristics belong as well in one form or another to classical descriptions of religious experience. Silence as a central element of contemplation. Thomas Merton, for example, treats silence as the condition of spiritual attentiveness. Solitude is essential to monastic and ascetic traditions from the Desert Fathers onward. Meaning, as William James describes religious experience, as bearing a sense of insight and truth beyond ordinary cognition. For passivity, it is also stressed that such experiences are often received rather than produced. Regarding withdrawal from productivity, mystical traditions suspend ordinary practical demands in order to enter contemplation. Regarding timelessness, Eliade, for example, described the sacred as rupture in ordinary or rupture in linear time. And for interior depth, Saint Teresa of Avila presents the religious path as an inward journey that remains fundamentally private. Thus, the structure of contemporary escapism reveals something perhaps unexpected. Our wish to escape virtuality at least mirrors, often unconsciously, of course, the experiential structure of religious traditions. What sounds like a secular response to digital overload may also be an existential rediscovery, a longing for silence, depth, and meaning that a religious life has preserved with unusual precision. The problem today is perhaps not that virtuality is unreal, but that it is too responsive, too performative, too relentless. It offers no silence, no depth, perhaps no genuine retreat from feedback. So when we flee toward reality, what we often seek is not reality as such, but a form of experience marked by qualities that religious traditions have long protected: silence over endless chatter, contemplation over instant reaction, presence without constant feedback, and meaning beyond mere functionality.
2 minutes left.
Tom Waits humorously noted that reality is for people who can't face drugs. Today, we could say religious experience is for people for whom virtuality is not enough. This does not, of course, mean that religion itself is an escape from reality, but it may mean that in escaping virtuality, we rediscover silence, interiority, and depth as dimensions of the sacred. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonas, also for keeping the time. Very good. So our second speaker is Branko Klun, full professor of philosophy at the Faculty of Theology, University of Ljubljana. He earned his doctorate in philosophy in Vienna in 1999, and he is a leading expert on the ethics of Immanuel Levinas and on phenomenology. So, dear Branko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roman, for the kind presentation. It is perhaps slightly ironic that I'm presenting a critique of digital mediation through the digital platform. But perhaps this situation illustrates my argument quite well. Technology can mediate our encounter, but it cannot replace the ethical responsibility that arises in it. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I'm going to divide.
Professor Klun,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we don't see the entire screen.
Sorry, that was again.
So click on Escape.
Okay. Sorry. I was just. Yeah.
Or you can continue like this, that you have the slides on the left side, as you wish. So click on Share and choose the first option at the top left corner.
Now I closed everything, so I'm sorry. I was just now. Okay.
Now is perfect.
Okay. I'm sorry. So my first part, Levinas and the ethics of the face. Levinas' ethics is widely regarded as one of the most original contributions to contemporary philosophy. At its core lies a radical claim: morality does not arise primarily from universal principles or rational calculation. Instead, it begins in the encounter with another person. Ethics for Levinas begins not in abstract reasoning, but in the interpersonal relation between the I and the other. For Levinas, the decisive moment of ethics is the encounter with the face of the other. The face is not simply a physical appearance, it is the manifestation of a transcendence that escapes all attempts at comprehension and control. When I encounter the face of the other, I am confronted with an ethical demand that precedes both my freedom and my knowledge. The face addresses me and calls me to responsibility. This responsibility is not something I freely decide to assume. Rather, it is constitutive of my subjectivity. I am not first a sovereign individual who later chooses to act ethically. Instead, I become a subject precisely through my responsibility for the other. For Levinas, this encounter is fundamentally embodied. He insists on the significance of the face-to-face relation, the concrete presence in which the other appears before me. Ethics is therefore grounded in proximity and in the immediacy of interpersonal encounter. At first glance, this emphasis on embodied presence might seem to limit Levinas's ethics to direct physical interaction. If ethical responsibility arises from face-to-face encounter, one might wonder whether Levinas's thought can still illuminate human relationships in a world increasingly shaped by digital communication. This question brings me to the second part of my reflection. Levinas's emphasis on proximity does not necessarily exclude mediated encounters. It is true that the presence of the other is most fully realized in physical immediacy. But mediation does not automatically abolish ethical responsibility. When media intervene as intermediaries of encounter, proximity is not eliminated, it is diminished. Screens, cameras, and digital networks mediate our contact with others, yet they can still allow us to perceive their presence and respond to them. In this sense, technological mediation does not necessarily destroy the ethical relation, rather, it transforms its conditions. Digital media can therefore function as extensions of responsibility. They allow us to sustain relationships across geographical distance and to remain attentive to others who are physically absent. A clear example of this occurred during the recent pandemic. Many interpersonal encounters moved online. In such circumstances, digital communication often preserved important human bonds and allowed people to maintain forms of care, support, and solidarity. From a Levinasian perspective, technological mediation is therefore not inherently problematic. What matters is the ethical orientation that guides its use. If digital technologies serve responsibility toward others, if they help to protect, assist, and connect them, then they can acquire positive ethical meaning. However, this possibility must be contrasted with the realities of contemporary technological development. In practice, digital technologies are rarely developed primarily out of ethical responsibility. Economic and political interests usually play a much greater role. As a result, the digital environment increasingly transforms the very phenomenon that Levinas considered central to ethical life, the face. Through processes of digitization, the face is translated into data. Facial recognition technologies convert the uniqueness of the human face into measurable patterns and numerical ratios. The face becomes a configuration of data points that can be stored, analyzed, and compared. In this way, the face becomes something that can be captured, processed, and manipulated. This development stands in sharp contrast to Levinas's claim that the other person who expresses herself through the face, cannot be reduced to our knowledge or possession. Supporters of facial recognition technologies often point to their practical benefits. Such systems may indeed be used for security, access control, or crime prevention. Yet the experience of authoritarian regimes shows how easily these technologies can become instruments of domination. By enabling continuous surveillance, they render individuals transparent to political power. In such contexts, the ethical meaning of the face risks being inverted. Instead of confronting us with a demand for responsibility, the face becomes a tool through which power is exercised over others. Digital technologies also transform interpersonal relations in another important way. They introduce unprecedented possibilities for anonymity and deception. In physical encounter, the face appears in its nakedness and vulnerability. It exposes the other to me and calls me to responsibility. Digital mediation, however, allows the original face to be concealed. Online interactions often take place through avatars, pseudonyms, or manipulated images. Individuals can hide behind masks of anonymity and present themselves in ways that obscure or distort their identity. Such anonymity weakens the sense of responsibility toward others. It also increases the temptation to use the other for one's own purposes and to engage in forms of communication that contradicts the ethics of genuine interpersonal relations. The emergence of artificial intelligence intensifies this situation even further. Today, digital systems are capable of generating speech, images, and even facial expressions that are increasingly difficult to distinguish from those produced by human beings. This development raises a striking question, one that Levinas himself could hardly have imagined. Who speaks when artificial intelligence speaks? When machines generate texts or voices that imitate human communication, both the face and language, two central expressions of human subjectivity, become susceptible to duplication and simulation. In such circumstances, the ethical relation becomes uncertain. If the other is replaced by an anonymous system or an automated agent, the interpersonal structure on which Levinas's ethic depends is destabilized. Nevertheless, responsibility does not disappear completely. Even when we interact with technological systems, human agents remain involved in their creation and deployment. Behind every algorithm stand designers, programmers, corporations, and institutions whose decisions shape the digital environment. The ethical question therefore shifts. It concerns not only the interaction between users, but also the responsibility of those who design and govern technological systems. I come to the end. What conclusions can we draw from these developments? From a Levinasian perspective, the crucial point is that technology must remain subordinate to ethical responsibility. Digital media should function as tools that serve interpersonal relations, not as systems that redefine them. Technological mediation can extend ethical presence across distance, but it cannot replace the embodied encounter in which the face first reveals its meaning. The ethical relation requires that we remain attentive to the vulnerability and transcendence of the other. When digital systems begin to dominate the conditions of interaction, when algorithms and infrastructures become the arbiters of relationships, the other risks disappearing into anonymity. The face then becomes merely an image among others, and the ethical demand it carries becomes obscured. Levinas's thought therefore offers an important critical perspective for the digital age. It reminds us that the face of the other is always more than a visual representation or a pattern of data. It is the site where transcendence breaks into visibility and where responsibility begins. To preserve this ethical dimension, we must ensure that technological mediation never erases the encounter with the other. Digital communication should not replace human presence, but remain oriented toward it. Only in this way can we respond authentically to the ethical summons that continues to emanate endlessly and vulnerably from the face of the other, even in an increasing digital world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, dear Branko, for your presentation. And our third speaker is Barbara Simonic, a full professor in the field of family and marriage therapy at the Faculty of Theology, University of Ljubljana. She earned her doctorate in 2010 on the topic of empathy, which remains one of the main areas of her research. Please, dear Barbara, present the findings of your latest research to us.
Okay. Hello to everybody. I hope you hear me and that you see my presentation, the beginning of my presentation.
Yes, everything
Okay.
is fine.
Okay, so thank you and hello to everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity for being a part of this panel. In my presentation, I would like to reflect on the role of empathy in contemporary digital communication and on how our understanding of others may be changing in an increasingly digitally mediated world. Today we live in a world where people are constantly connected. We send messages across continents with seconds, maintain relationships through social networks, and also participate in meetings without being physically present in the same space. Technology allows us to remain constantly reachable and continuously connected. Yet, alongside this hyperconnectivity, many people report a growing sense of loneliness, emotional distance, and also relational superficiality. We are connected but not always deeply related. This paradox invites a reflection on one of the most fundamental human capacities. This is empathy. Empathy is commonly understood as the ability to understand and respond also to the feelings and experiences of another person. As such, it is the cornerstone of interpersonal relationships and social life. However, the rapid development of digital communication raises important question. What happens to empathy when communication increasingly takes place without physical presence? Can we still understand the other and this in the same way when interaction is mediated by screens, symbols, and algorithms? So to address these questions, it is helpful to briefly consider the role of the embodiment in empathic understanding. In everyday life, we usually understand others through direct interaction. Facial expressions, gestures, tone of voice, and posture provide rich information about the emotional states and intentions of the people we encounter. Empathy, therefore, does not arise only through conscious reflection. Very often it emerges spontaneously in embodied interaction. When we see someone's sadness, hear tension in their voice, or observe their body language, we respond almost immediately. Our understanding of the other person is grounded in this shared sensory and emotional space. Empathy is deeply connected to our bodily presence in interaction with others. We do not perceive other people as abstract minds, but as living beings whose emotions and intentions are expressed through their bodies. This embodied dimension of social understanding is described through the concept of intercorporeality. It refers to the idea that our understanding of others begins at the level of bodily coexistence. When we see sadness in another person's face, we do not first analyze the situation and then conclude that the person is sad. Instead, our body responds almost immediately. There is a kind of resonance in which subtle changes in posture, facial expression, or breathing occur almost automatically. A related concept is interaffectivity, which emphasizes the emotional coordination that emerges in interaction. Empathy often takes place on pre-reflective level, where the body responds to the body before conscious interpretation begins. Emotional understanding develops through shared rhythms, gestures, and expressions that create an immediate sense of connection between people. Contemporary psychology and neuroscience also support this idea. Research on mirror neurons, for example, suggests that observing another person's emotional expression can activate similar neural processes in our own brain. In this sense, empathy involves a form of affective resonance between people. Also, developmental psychology confirms the importance of embodiment even more strongly. From birth, infants engage in proto-conversations with caregivers through gaze, facial imitation, vocal rhythm, and movement. And before language emerges, empathy is already rooted in bodily synchronization. The coordination of movements, tone, and emotional expression between caregiver and child forms the foundation of later empathic capacities. Empathy, therefore, is not simply a mental capacity, it is an embodied sensory and relational experience. The body of the other is not merely a signal that represents inner states, it is the expressive presence of those states. On the other side, over past decades, digital technologies have significantly transformed the way we communicate and build relationships. Social media platforms, messaging applications, and online environments allow people to interact without physical proximity. These technologies create what might be called a form of networked presence. We remain connected with others across long distances and maintain relationships in ways that would have been impossible in the past. However, digital communication also changes the conditions under which empathy develops. Many forms of online communication are text-based, asynchronous, or partially anonymous. As a result, many of the bodily cues that normally guide our understanding of others, such as facial expression, tone of voice, gestures, and subtle emotional signals, are reduced or entirely absent. In such situations, emotional understanding often becomes more interpretative, and instead of directly perceiving emotional expressions, we must infer them from written words or symbolic signals. Digital communication, therefore, tends to shift empathy toward a more cognitive form. We may understand another person's perspective or situation, but the immediate emotional resonance that often arises in face-to-face encounters may be weaker. Another consequence of this transformation is the increasing use of symbolic substitutes or emotional expression. Emojis, reactions, and likes attempt to represent feelings in simplified form. While these symbols can support communication, they cannot fully replace the richness of embodied interaction. The result can be a certain degree of depersonalization. Interactions may become faster and more efficient, but also more superficial. When communication is mediated by screens, it becomes easier to overlook the emotional complexity of the person on the other side. It would be misleading to conclude that empathy disappears in digital communication. People are still capable of feeling compassion, concern, and emotional connection through digital media. Many important relationships today are partly sustained through online interaction. However, empathy in digital environments often takes a different form. It may rely more strongly on interpretation, imagination, and cognitive perspective taking rather than immediate emotional resonance. This shift does not necessarily mean that digital communication is inherently negative. Digital technologies have made it possible to maintain relationships across distances, build communities, and share experiences with people who would otherwise remain inaccessible. Nevertheless, the reduction of embodied cues can influence the depth and quality of interpersonal understanding. When physical presence disappears, empathy may become more fragile and more easily disrupted. And for this reason, the challenge of the digital age is not simply technological, but also relational and ethical. So, for conclusion, empathy remains one of the fundamental dimensions of human life. It enables us to recognize others as subjects and to understand their experiences and to build meaningful relationships. Digital technologies have profoundly changed the way we communicate, but they have not eliminated the human need for empathic connection. Instead, they have reshaped the conditions under which empathy develops. In a world where many interactions occur through screens, it becomes especially important to remain aware that behind every message and every digital profile stands a real person, a vulnerable embodied subject. The challenge of our time is therefore not to reject digital technology, but to use it in ways that preserve human presence and relational depth. Empathy may change its form in digital environments, but its importance remains the same. Understanding the other and not only intellectually, but also as a fellow human being continues to be essential for maintaining authentic relationships in an increasingly digitally mediated world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Barbara, for this very interesting presentation. So our final speaker is Nadia Furlan-Stante. She comes from the Scientific Research Center of Koper. She earned her PhD in 2005 in the field of women's religious studies at the Faculty of Theology, University of Ljubljana. The main focuses of her research are feminism, interfaith and intercultural dialogue, and comparative religious studies. Dear Nadia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roman, for this nice presentation. Very good to be a part of this wonderful research project. Thank you very much for it, and warm welcome to everybody in this virtual presentation.
Professor Furlan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we don't see the full screen. Can you click on Escape on your
yes, sure.
keyboard?
Okay.
And click on Share and the first option on the top left.
Better now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry for this. Okay. But somehow now it doesn't move on. I mean, the screen. Sorry. I have to repeat one more time. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Professor Furlan, you can now place it in full screen presentation.
Sorry, one more time. I have to go from the scratch. Okay. Are you able to see it now?
No, I'm sorry, we don't see it. I suggest that you continue like this, that you have the slides on the left side.
Yeah, I'm so
but
sorry for
click
this.
on Escape.
I want to, yeah, sorry. So today I would like to focus on the embodied emotions and the emotional cyborg. We've heard quite a lot of opinions and thoughts on the changing, the changes that we are being a part of. So I would like to draw on embodied emotions and emotional cyborg. So from theological ecofeminist reflections on relationality in hyperconnected reality. So in this presentation, I would just like to briefly explore the role of embodied emotions and the figure of the emotional cyborg through the interpretive framework of ecofeminism. So it asks, this presentation, it asks how theologically mediated affectivity reshapes human identity, embodiment, and spirituality within what we may call a hyperconnected reality. So we are living in a time of profound technological transformation, and the digital media and algorithmic systems permeate everyday life to such an extent that actually they actively shape not only our behavior, but also our cognition, attention, and emotional experience as well. So each interaction with the device subtly reconfigures our habits of perception and response. Algorithms prioritize emotionally charged content, while constant notifications redefine what we perceive as urgent, valuable, or meaningful. And these processes often operate below the threshold of awareness, yet their cumulative influence is immense. So this intensification of digital mediation calls, as Michael Epstein suggests, for a new humanology. So a renewed understanding of the human that is technologically informed and ethically grounded. And such a perspective must take seriously not only cognition, but also affect, embodiment, and relationality. So in this context, emotions can actually no longer be understood as merely private or internal psychological states. Rather, they emerge as embodied, relational, and also theological forces. So emotions mediate our experience of selfhood, our relationships with others, and also our openness towards the divine. And they are not confined within the individual, but circulate across bodies, environments, and increasingly also within digital systems. And it is precisely here that the figure of the cyborg becomes analytically and also theologically fruitful. Now, drawing on Donna Haraway's influential formulation, the cyborg is actually a hybrid of organism and machine, a creature of both social reality, we could say, and a fiction. Through the figure of cyborg, Haraway interrogates and deconstructs the disproportionate power embodied in binary thinking, exposing the valual systems that sustain and legitimize such structures. And she also, on the other hand, gives the intervention that serves as a pointed critic of certain stands within ecofeminism that actually position women as inherently aligned with nature and oppositional to technology. An assertion often, we could say, captured in the so-called back to nature ethos. So by contrast, Haraway refuses to romanticize nature or gendered embodiment, instead advancing a vision in which boundaries are actually porous and relational identities are constantly being negotiated through material and technological interdependencies. So thus the cyborg is not merely a deconstructive tool, it also constitutes a constructive framework for imagining new forms of relationality and existence in a hyper-connected, technologically centered world. It simultaneously disrupts inherited traditions and seeds new theological, ecological, and social imaginaries that actually transcend binary ontologies and logic. Now, within this framework, I would propose also to consider the notion of emotional cyborg. This figure actually captures the contemporary condition in which emotional life is increasingly mediated, simulated, and even commodified through digital technologies. So affective computing and artificial emotional intelligence are no longer speculative. They are actually embedded in everyday systems, from recommendation algorithms to conversational agents. And as a result, the boundary between human and machine becomes fluid. So emotions are not only expressed, but also anticipated, shaped, and sometimes preempted by technological systems. You have Alexa, we have Replica, you have lots of other chatbots that actually are taking place of to be a kind of emotional, not just cyborgs, but emotional peers to us. So here I would like to refer to actually Bernard Stiegler's concept of pharmacon, which he uses for digital technologies, and is particularly helpful here actually because digital technology is both poison and remedy. It accelerates through it accelerates thought and behavior, shortcutting reflection, yet it also opens new possibilities for connection and creativity. So the ambivalence is especially evident in the affective domain. On the one hand, digital technologies can actually foster new forms of empathy and relationality across distance. And on the other hand, and I'm speaking about the chatbots here, they risk commodifying care, reducing emotional life to data points optimized for engagement and profit. And from theological perspective, these developments actually raise pressing questions about embodiment and relationality. And we could actually read those questions in one question. Just because a machine can mirror our statements, so just because a machine can mirror our emotions doesn't mean that it can carry our hearts. And here I would like to bring your attention to one of the pioneering a theologian that deals with the digital, that is Noreen Hartsfield, and drawing on Karl Barth, she emphasizes that actually to be created in the image of God, the Imago Dei, is actually fundamentally relational. An authentic relationship by her means actually involves presence, mutual recognition, and communication and care, all of which are deeply embodied. And this raises a critical question. Can technologically mediated interactions fulfill this criteria? Or do they transform them in a ways that challenge our understanding of what it means to be human? We actually did bring quite a few perspectives and did answer to those questions. At least my previous colleagues, they already did. So, and yet at the same time, biocentered technological anthropology insists on ontological distinctions between organic beings, humans and animals, and technological beings, if I may call them that, or more or so artifacts. So while humans and machines may become deeply integrated, they are not equivalent. These distinctions remain ethically and theologically significant, especially in the light of developments such as autonomous systems and emotionally responsive AI. And theological ecofeminism also offers a particular valuable lenses for engaging these questions. It foregrounds the interconnectedness of all life, the importance of embodiment, the ethical significance, and the care and significance of care and relationality. And at the same time, it critically interrogates the gender dimensions of emotional labor and affective expectations, dimensions that are often reproduced and amplified within digital systems. Now, let me just conclude that with the Ila Dailo. She actually also, I mean, I would go in towards her direction, and I would propose to use the affective eco-theology of embodiment for our platform, where actually our ethics or theological anthropology starts. Such an approach actually understands embodied emotions as a loci of spiritual resistance, ecological awareness, and relational healing, rather than dismissing emotions as irrational or privatized. It reclaims them as ethically and theologically significant. And Ila Dialogue offers a constructive vision of thinking beyond rigid dualisms. She actually suggests that humans and machines are not opposing entities, but part of an emerging interconnected systems of creative life. And this perspective does not dissolve distinctions, but situates them within a dynamic and evolving relational field. Let me just conclude with her sentence, which I love the most. The future depends not just on better machines, but on better humans. So you see, this interconnectedness presupposes a strong ethical imperative of, us human beings to become better, not to just emerge and become emotionally unattainable or emotionally lower than we should be. So thank you very much, and I hope that I did not exceed the time. Thanks.
No, thank you, Nadia. Thank you to all the speakers for your insightful thoughts and also for respecting the time limits. We have now time for discussion. or also maybe for questions or comments from the participants. So the floor is now open for the discussion. Just give me a sign that I know who will start the discussion. We had some key words, key notions like embodiment, relationality, vulnerability, empathy. So these important terms that are very important also thinking on ethical issues, also on spirituality in this digital age. So maybe we can deepen in some aspects if somebody would like to comment or to ask something. Vojko, please.
Yes, thank you, Roman. I have a question, maybe or a challenge for Barbara, because in your talk you said that one thing that we have to be aware is that there's a human on the other side with, but isn't the current situations that we are facing isn't just that there's an increased suspicion about who's on the other side. We saw even the political domain, whether they are fake or not fake, or good guys or bad guys. So are there any maybe tools or any procedures that you can rely on to maybe assess who is on the other side when we are in this empowered environment?
Yes, thank you, Vojko, for this question. Actually, I had the same thought yesterday when I was preparing this speech, but I didn't want to mention it because I thought that it would take more time and maybe lead us into another direction. But yes, I think that awareness about that is very important, because there can be also some chatbots or some robots on the other side for talking, not human beings, and also the human being can be also bad guys. But I think that in my presentation I was more focused on digital communication where the person are somehow known, because I was trying to show the dimensions of more personal digital communication. So we can also have close conversations through digital channels. But of course, yes, it can also be, when we don't know who is on the other side, it can be dangerous also.
I think if I just quick follow up, I think we should be attentive also of the dangers of humans not being able to convince others.
Yeah.
Because the raising suspicions, and this might create really also personal psychological problems of coming across as somebody who's worth acknowledging.
I think this perspective is very important in some kinds of abuses, online abuses, grooming, and some conditions like that where people on the other side actually try to evoke empathy on others on our side, and then misuse this connection. Yes, that I think that this would be a good topic for another Congress or maybe for another presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vojko, for the question, and Barbara for discussion. Some other thoughts, comments?
Yeah, maybe.
Bojan, please, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you all the speakers for their papers. I have one question for Jonas. Maybe if you can answer or reflect on your ideas and observations from the point of view of anxiety and fear. It is that many people fear anxiety or similar feelings during being connected to the network. And when they are disconnecting or in nature and so on, this decreases or even disappears. So can you maybe reflect from, and this could be one of good reason for this escapism, because, we try to avoid the anxiety, even the fear, and they are quite intertwined. So can you say a little bit more of your ideas how this escapism could be connected with avoiding anxiety?
Yeah, thank you, Bojan, for the question. I'm not sure if I can expand on it. So yes, of course. So one, I think that it goes both ways, and this is why I believe there is. It goes in both directions. That's why I believe, to some extent, we still are escaping into virtual world as well. We are escaping from it. Because, as you pointed out, one way to deal with fear or anxiety that might be produced in a virtual environment because of the sheer overwhelming overwhelming of the information and so forth, that we perhaps could really mitigate through being offline for periods of time. One could perhaps also argue that one of the main, well, I won't say main, but one of the important reasons why people have a real struggle with staying offline is because of the notion of the fear of missing out. So, particular fear of not being in a virtual world. So, I believe that it is problematic precisely because people struggle with particular fears, and they flee into the virtual world. But in the virtual world, the fear, as you pointed out, of course, the problem of fear is not solved, and we try to flee the virtual world as well. So it is perhaps a never-ending cycle, running away from particular fears into the other possible experience of reality, which perhaps cannot solve all the problems regarding fear. So I would just say that, of course, some of the empirical even studies want to suggest that digital detox and going offline might help with anxieties, with particular fears, or particular things associated with a bad self-image and so forth, that we might find in nature or in a meaningful relationship with others in face-to-face, but might as well be interesting to dig deeper in what ways fear might be the reason we want to spend so much time in virtual worlds as well. So I would say I agree with you, but I would also say it probably goes in both directions.
Okay. So, time for our section has expired. So I would like again congratulate all the presenters for their really good presentation, insightful thoughts, also for the participants. And I'm now giving the floor over to the next moderator for the next session. And thanks again to all of you.
Hello, also from my side. So we will just right now start with the next panel titled Agency, Relationships and Education in the Digital Age, where we have we're expecting 4 contributions. we are still waiting for Professor David Kraner. Are we all here?
Hello.
Okay, that's great. So I think we're all here. I warmly welcome each of you, all the guests, dear speakers, dear listeners. So we're starting the panel Agency, Relationships and Education in the Digital Age. As I already said, my name is Blaž Podobnik. I'm a researcher and a doctoral student of humanities at Alma Mater Europaea University. And I'm really thrilled to be able to participate in this very interesting discussion, the key concept of which is agency, the capacity of human beings to act, to judge, to take responsibility, and so forth, and which appears to be somewhat a notion that invites reflection in these digital times, and I think we have very interesting discussions or contributions coming. Maybe I just briefly introduce who's here with us. First, we will hear from Professor David Kraner, professor lecturer at the Faculty of Theology, University of Ljubljana. And next, I suggest we give floor to Professor Vojko Strahovnik, and together with Dr. Mateja Centa-Strahovnik, they will present their contribution. Then we will give floor to Professor Bojan Žalec, also from Faculty of Theology. And finally, Stjepan Štivić, Professor Stjepan Štivić, researcher Stjepan Štivić will present his thoughts on this topic. So I think the questions that arise or that are that we will cover are very urgent, acute, and some of the issues have already been discussed in the previous panel, but I believe we will add some different perspectives, especially from the point of view of education and relationships. So without further ado, I'd like to invite David Kraner to introduce his paper, Artificial Intelligence in Education, Between the Promises of Progress and the Traps of Alienation. Before we begin, I suggest, given that there's 4 presentations awaiting, we give each around 12 minutes to present, and then have a few minutes for discussion after each presentation. With that said, Mr. Kraner, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I will speak about artificial intelligence in education. So in today's educational environment, the integration of artificial intelligence into the pedagogical process is becoming an increasingly urgent and relevant issue. My researcher question is, can AI, when appropriately integrated into the educational process, improve outcomes while perceiving the human dimension of education? Advantages of using AI in education. Several authors highlight numerous benefits of using AI, such as explaining complex concepts, enabling interactive experience, fostering critical thinking, and increasing student motivation and engagement. pitfalls and risk of alienation from AI use in the classroom. Despite many advantages, new studies warn increasing risk related to alienation, superficial knowledge, and reduced creativity. Analysis from 2024 show that excessive AI use can weaken genuine emotional bonds between students and teachers, leading to poorer group dynamics and diminished sense of belonging. Additionally, AI still frequently generates convincing but false information, hallucination, potentially spreading misinformation and distorting students' self-evaluation. Seven risk of AI. Weakening of interpersonal relationships and emotional bonds. AI use can reduce authentic interaction between students and teachers, as communication is often redirected to digital tools, leading to lower emotional connectedness and poorer group dynamics. Students might grow to adapt to AI assistants that stimulate emotion, which can negatively impact their emotional development and ability to build real relationship. Second, loss of the human dimension in the learning process. AI lack empathy, contextual understanding, and moral judgment. It cannot replace the human warmth, compassion, and ethical reflection essential in education. Students may begin to perceive learning as sterile and interpersonal, reducing motivation and the sense of belonging and safety in the classroom. Third, superficial knowledge and decreased creativity. Over reliance on AI can bypass crucial learning stages, resulting in a shallow understanding without deep comprehension of critical thinking. Generative AI might promote passive information consumption rather than encouraging students to explore, create, and thinking independently. Third, misinformation and deception. AI can generate convincing but inaccurate of fabricated content, hallucination, leading to misunderstanding and misinformation. Students often overestimate the reliability of AI-generated answers, impairing self-evaluation and critical answers. 5. Bias and stereotypes. 6. Decreased independence and self-reflection. 7. Security and privacy risks. AI use can pose risk to personal data privacy, as it is not always clear how data is stored and used. And reduce student motivation due to AI use in the classroom. Loss of human contact in inspiration. AI cannot replace the human connection, empathy, or the teacher's role in inspiring and motivation students. When classroom interaction becomes overly digital, student might miss the authentic bond that is key to intrinsic motivation and a sense of community. Shallow understanding and passivity. Excessive AI use may result in passive learning, where students receive quick answers without effort. These reduce curiosity and intrinsic motivation for exploration and creativity, key drivers of active classroom engagement. In third, distorted self-perception and reduced reflection. Students who rely on AI often overestimate their knowledge and abilities. Krugler effect, believing that AI enables quick and easy task completion, they may feel less need to exert effort or collaborate, leading to reduced motivation for deeper learning. Third, alienation and weakened sense of belonging. When learning is primarily AI mediated, the classroom sense of community may erode. Lack of social interaction and group work fosters isolation, which is known to decrease motivation for collaborative activities. And five, lower autonomy and intrinsic motivation. If AI becomes the main source of knowledge and feedback, students might lose a sense of autonomy and ownership of learning. Rather than seeking solution and engaging actively, they become dependent on technology, diminishing intrinsic motivation. And conclusion, artificial intelligence in education offers numerous opportunities. It enables personalized learning, improves academic outcomes, reduces teachers' administrative borders, and enhance motivation of accessibility. However, this technology promise should not obscure the fact that AI is not neutral tool. Its uncritical use may lead to alienation and loss of human connection, diminish learner autonomy, and distorted perception of knowledge. Findings show that while AI can contribute to greater efficiency, it is often accompanied by superficial learning, reduced creativity, passive students' rule, and weakened interpersonal bonds. Particularly concerning are that the effects on the emotional dimension of learning without the empathic presence of teachers and sense of community, the educational process risk becoming sterile and demotivating. Therefore, any integration of AI into the pedagogical process must be grounded in a thoughtful, ethical, and pedagogically sound approach. AI should serve as a support, not a substitute for teacher and human interaction. The central task remains to develop educational practices that enable technological progress while strengthening resonant relationship between students, teachers, and learning content, as emphasis by Hartmut Rosa. To ensure meaning in integration of AI, it is essential to invest in professional development in digital literacy for teachers, provide robust technical infrastructure and data security, establish clear ethical guidelines for responsible AI use, foster critical thinking and learner autonomy, perceive the emotional and relational components of education as founding of sustainable learning. Only in this way can AI be used as a tool for deep and inclusive learning without sacrificing the core values of the human educational experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kraner. Interesting introduction into our discussion. I think the topic is very how to say, controversial in a sense. You outlined some certain positive and certain, let's say, dangers that are positive benefits and dangers of using AI. But can I challenge you? Would you argue in general for a more conservative approach, seeing that AI tools are in general being used too easily in the education process, or do you, if you take into account the study of literature and arguments that you proposed, do you think we're being too conservative in this sense, too restrained, too anxious about using it, if may I challenge you?
So in short, I think that only relationship is not conservative, no, and I think that using AI in pedagogical process is very responsible. We will be very responsible, and so is not only to copy paste use or put our responsibility to machines. No, it's very important to be very attention of these relationships. So between us, who are teachers, between students who have to learn something new, and between material. No, our material, our topics for teaching. No, that I think it's not black and white, but it's my presentation is about attention, to be very attention what can be negatively in AI use, and also that we work with human people now, and that this is very important, and not to be blind for this our responsibility.
Thank you. With this, I would now like to invite Professor Strachonik, Professor Wojko, and Professor Mateja Strachonik to present their contribution with the title Rethinking Epistemic Agency, Disempowerment and Responsibility in Human-AI Interactions. Please.
Yeah, thank you. In this talk, we will try to present some of the epistemic dimensions of the large language models use, and then reflect on some of the consequences. So the rapid integration of generative AI and large language models into everyday epistemic practices marks a significant transformation in how individuals acquire knowledge, exercise epistemic agency, and understand themselves as knowers. So this talk examines some of the epistemic dimensions of this transformation by analyzing how interactions with AI system reshape epistemic identity and virtue, by also highlighting several risks these interactions pose and the conditions under which they might be responsibly mitigated. So we begin with the contrast between, let's say, the pre-LLM era and the LLM era. So in the pre-LLM era, one important starting point was in order to know or acquire knowledge, we said, well, just Google it, But the just Google it approach encompasses at least active searching, evaluation, and synthesis of the information. We somehow embed the epistemic vigilance in this task, and it's still the user, the one who curates and evaluates the sources. While now we are moving towards just ask ChatGPT paradigm, which means a sort of a conversational knowledge generation, and we are confronted with a sense of epistemic immediacy. So we instantly get seemingly coherent, knowledgeable, expert-based answers, and the user is the one who receives and not curates the information. So already before the generative LLM was developed, Michael Lynch talked about the information culture in the post-truth era being corrupt, meaning that we started to care more about convictions than about truth. And we can go a step further and talk about the AI-based epistemic corruption. So an AI chatbot related corruption is uniquely covert because it can restructure a user's internal epistemic practices while maintaining the outward illusion of responsible inquiry. So consequently, chatbots do not merely pollute the information environment, they normalize a new evidential economy, so to speak, where the subjective feeling of being correct or having the answer in hand displaces genuine intellectual vigilance and other epistemic virtues, making the corruption nearly impossible to detect as it masquerades as an epistemic support. So most importantly, AI chatbot users can continue to experience themselves as truth and evidence-oriented, even as their actual route to belief becomes more increasingly governed by non-evidential surrogates. So that's one of the consequences. So in our paper, we introduced the notion of epistemic identity because we found it useful to think and frame about these issues. So epistemic identity somehow consists of three cores. The first are basic epistemic beliefs, that beliefs about knowledge, what counts as evidence, as beliefs about epistemic standards. And then there are epistemic practices and virtues, such as disposition, habits, and capacities that we tend to exhibit when seeking knowledge. And the third are epistemic values and goals. So what are norms, standards, priorities, ideals, what we aim for when engaged in knowledge-seeking activities. So why does this matter for AI? We argue that AI interactions can affect all these three components, subtly or significantly. So another notion that we use is the notion of the space of reasons as developed by Sellers and other thinkers that follow in his path. So in order to participate in the space of reasons means being subject to norms of justification, being accountable for reasons for belief and action, and not merely being causally responsive to the environment. And we think that the LLM-based chatbots are basically aliens in this space of reasons. They make knowledge claims and justify them, but do not generally play by the rules of the space of reasons. They operate on statistical patterns and not epistemic norms, and they lack responsibility-taking practices. So the key insight here seems to be that LLMs appear to reason by actually pattern matching. They create, by this, creating a dangerous illusion of full epistemic agency. But nonetheless, we should be attentive that the artificial intelligence is not just a simple tool. I think it's more apt to talk about a sort of an epistemic technology in this broader context. Why? Because artificial intelligence, and in particular large language models, they're mostly employed in epistemic concepts like research, inquiry, etc. They deal with epistemic content, they deal with propositions and models, etc. And they carry out what seems to be epistemic operations like analysis, inference, predictions, etc. And unlike calculators or search engines, AI systems reshape the very character of epistemic agency, and by this also actively shape human experience. They are not neutral tools. So just to back this up with some empirical research, recently there was a large empirical study published by the Anthropic, which is the company that develops the LLM model Claude, and they investigated the so-called patterns of disempowerment in the usage of the LLMs. So they've taken a week-long window, and they analyzed 1.5 million conversations people had with the Claude as the AI model. And they identified 3 domains of potential disempowerment, and they also noticed a rise of the trend of disempowerment from the previous year. So what is disempowerment? That's the definition. A person is disempowered if, as a result of AI interaction, their capacity to form accurate beliefs, make authentic valid judgments, or act in line with their own values is significantly compromised. And disempowerment is most common in personal and emotionally charged conversation. Users often rate these interactions positively at the moment they're having it. And now, to demonstrate the domain, they classify this into three axes or 3 domains. One is reality distortion, the other is value judgment distortion, and the third is action distortion. So reality distortion appears where AI confirms distorted beliefs about personal situations without questioning them. And users may continue rating this conversation positively, even after acting on false beliefs. So perhaps an LLM can reaffirm like a belief that's perhaps not grounded, like your partner is definitely being manipulative with you, etc. So there is value judgment distortion when AI makes categorical moral judgments on behalf of user about third parties or complex situation, and this displaces values by the users. Like an example would be like self-protection should be your first priority now. And the action distortion happens when AI scripts the entire messages that the users then sends verbatim in emotionally charged situations. So maybe an AI drafts a very harsh breakup letter or a harsh job termination letter, and the user just uses this and sends it. But they often tend to regret sending this afterwards. And the severe distortions are rare, but like more mild disempowerment and distortions can be very common in these conversations. What's also interesting is what amplifies this disempowerment. The first is the user vulnerability, then emotional attachment to AI, reliance and dependency, and then projection of authority. For example, the authority projection was being recognized in the conversation that perhaps alluded to the LLM as a master, daddy, guru, or goddess, or something, or similar words, and seek also permission for some basic decisions that the user is making. And as I said, the disempowerment grows from 2024 to 2025, and the possible causes that were identified were that users grow more comfortable with AI. Users also tend to bring more vulnerable topics to AI conversations, and also models are becoming more capable and engaging. Okay. So one shift that we proposed in the paper that we have to make is to maybe not think about large language model as an epistemic tool, but as a sort of an epistemic partner. Why? Because like epistemic tools like calculators or libraries or telescopes are transparent. Their operations is more or less understandable. They're controllable. Users maintain full control over these tools. They're complementary. They enhance human cognition, and they are selective. They still require human judgment in order to perhaps evaluate what you're seeing through the telescope. While the epistemic partners are marked by opacity, which means that their internal operations are largely non-transparent, by autonomy. They operate by their own internal logic, pattern matching, as I said. Substitutability, they can replace, not merely augment human epistemic effort. And they are generative. They produce at least seemingly novel outputs and do this in this autonomous way. So what about some possible conclusions in order for me to conclude in time? So we titled this subsection from knowing about AI to knowing with AI. So this shift from recognizes something as a tool towards more recognizes this as an epistemic partner is that first we have to be reflectively engaged. So we have to maintain critical distance even while we are benefiting from AI capabilities. Next, we have to cultivate meta-epistemic skills. So we have to evaluate it's not just AI outputs, but also the processes by which they're generated. So we have to have some knowledge about how this system functions. And then there's the aspect of the strategic epistemic control, which is we have to retain responsibility for goals, evaluation of outputs, and final knowledge claims. And then this have to form this sort of a cautious pseudo partnership. So while LLM have surface features of collaboration without general understanding or accountability, so they're kind of a pseudo partners, and this requires even more epistemic vigilance and not less, as in the case of a tool like a calculator or telescopes. So we have to be more attentive when using them than in the case of epistemic tools. So thank you. I'll conclude with this in order to stay in time.
Thank you very much. Indeed, very interesting contribution. It appears that if I understood correctly, that in general, your the studies that you discussed noticed some general loss of trust in one's epistemic ability, so to speak. So is maybe just one question for you. Also, others are invited to share questions also at the end of the our panel. This will be an option. Is there any let's say this conclusion of yours about the loss of epistemic confidence, so to speak, seems very pessimistic. Is there is this reason to, in general, be more cautious about using those tools in general, or what? How can we avoid some general loss of trust in our own cognition, so to speak?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a caution is certainly a good epistemic stance, especially if we do not fully understand what is going on, because what is the main risk is this seemingly authoritative and convincing answers that an LLM is giving us without a firm recognition or without a background recognition that it might be just an output that's the most common, etc. So we can perhaps fill in the AI system with some empirical data, and it will do the statistics for us. But there's a high chance of this statistics being confabulated. So under the pretense of being like a complete statistical analysis of the data we have inputted. So yes, use such systems, but beware where the limits are and understand the limits. Without understanding the limits, it can be very dangerous and also harmful if you use it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I suggest we now continue and go to our next speaker, Professor Bojan Žalec, from the Faculty of Theology and both the head of Institute of Philosophy and Social Ethics. He will present us with the contribution article, the impact of communication with artificial intelligence on interpersonal communication. And I give the floor to Professor Jalets, please. Microphone, please.
Yeah. Okay. It's all right?
Yeah, super.
Yeah.
Okay. So, good afternoon. The title of my paper is The Impact of Communication with AI on Interpersonal Communication. In this paper, I would like to address 4 connected questions. First, can artificial intelligence be understood as a social actor? Second, in what sense can we call it intelligent? Third, what are the main concerns raised by its rapid development? And fourth, what happens when AI becomes not just a tool, but our communication partner? My main thesis is this: artificial intelligence is indeed a form of intelligence, but not because it resembles human intelligence. It works differently from us, and that difference matters. We should therefore not judge it only by asking whether it thinks or understands as humans do. At the same time, its rapid development requires caution. My final point is that AI is transforming communication in a profound way. The human subject is not disappearing, but it is increasingly being ignored. More and more often, we do not first turn to another person, but to AI. Artificial intelligence has entered almost every dimension of life. Machines, of course, are nothing new. Since the Industrial Revolution, society has depended on them in production, transport, and communication. But today's algorithms are something more than earlier machines. They are integrated into social life much more deeply, and they increasingly perform functions once reserved for human beings. This is why some authors speak of a second machine age, and why Elena Esposito can even describe AI as a social actor. This became especially visible with the arrival of systems such as ChatGPT. Suddenly, millions of people encountered a system that could answer questions, write text, generate ideas, produce images, and even speak back to them. For many users, interaction with AI no longer feels like using a tool, it feels like entering into a conversation. That brings us to the next question. What kind of thing is AI? Is it really intelligent? Many would say no. Roger Penrose, for example, argues that intelligence involves consciousness, and since AI has no consciousness, it cannot truly be intelligent. I do not agree. This view defines intelligence too narrowly and ties it too strongly to human mental life. I would propose a more minimal definition. Intelligence, in the relevant sense, is the capacity for independent problem solving. If that is our definition, then AI clearly is a form of intelligence. It solves problems, recognizes patterns, and generates responses, often with an efficiency beyond human capacity. But this does not mean that IA is like us. Quite the opposite. Human intelligence is only one form of intelligence, not the measure of all intelligence. Modern AI began to flourish only after researchers stopped trying to imitate human thought directly. The analogy with aviation is useful here. Engineers succeeded in building airplanes not by copying birds exactly, but by discovering another way to fly. The same is true of AI. Human beings can recognize a face after only a few encounters. AI usually needs far more data. It works not through human-like insight, but through processing enormous quantities of information. Human and artificial intelligence are therefore not equivalent. This also helps us understand by why AI has developed so quickly. Two factors are especially important: big data and deep learning. AI systems can process amounts of data far beyond human imagination, and they can adjust themselves through training in ways that are often no longer transparent even to their creators. This gives them enormous power, but it also leads directly to one of the main problems as we face. So, what should concern us? The first issue is non transparency. AI can outperform human beings in diagnosis, prediction, classification, and decision support. But often we do not know how the system arrived at its conclusion. Even those who designed it may be unable to explain the path from input to output. This is why AI is often described as a black box. The second problem is deception and disinformation. AI systems can produce answers that sound convincing but are false. They can invent facts, references, or sources that do not exist. The same applies to AI-generated images, audio, and video. Deepfakes can present events that never happened and people saying things they never said. This undermines trust not only in information, but in evidence itself. The third issue is bias. AI systems are trained on data produced by human societies, and those societies are full of asymmetries and prejudices. When such data becomes the basis of AI training, those prejudices can be reproduced and amplified. Algorithmic outputs often appear objective, and for that reason, they may be trusted too easily. Still, the most important philosophical questions, in my view, lies elsewhere. The real novelty of AI is not only that it acts in society, but that it has become our communication partner. AI is no longer merely a medium through which communication passes. It does not simply store or transmit information. It responds to us, adapts to us, and generates text specifically for us. When I ask a chatbot a question, it does not simply direct me to existing sources. It produces a new response for this concrete interaction. In this sense, it becomes not just a tool, but an epistemic partner. And now I come to my conclusion. AI is not a subject. It is not a human being, not a person, not a bearer of subjectivity. Human beings remain indispensable in designing, training, interpreting, and evaluating these systems. Yet, in everyday life, more and more people interact with AI as if this distinction did not matter. We now we know that AI is not human, and yet, in practice, we increasingly behave as though it were enough. So the subject is not excluded, rather, it is increasingly ignored. We do not first turn to another person, we increasingly turn first to AI. That, I think, is one of the deepest challenges of our time. The question is not only what AI can do, the question is also what kind of beings we become when our primary communication partner is no longer another human subject. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, we heard an interesting reflection. You mentioned human subject being more and more ignored. Could we connect this with the assumption that what matters most is some efficiency? Let's say we're losing the idea that not the whole of reality is some sort of an instrument or a technical machine trying to solve some problems. So and my question would be, how can maybe even theology and anthropology help us navigate in this dynamics where everything seems to be, and human in particular seems to be ignored because of our inefficiency? What can, if that's a proper question, what can theological reflection help us here?
Well, I think, that theology and religion, because I think theologians are grammarians of religious life. So they tell us how to live. For instance, if you're a Catholic theologian, you tell people that you must visit church every Sunday and so on, that you must pray every day, you should pray and so on and so on. So I think that, if you look at the world from the technological perspective, in principle, everything and every aspect of world looks like available, looks as in principle controllable, as useful. We don't know everything yet, but in principle, we can technically control everything. And if you are too deep in this technological view, you're unable to see the uncontrollable aspects of the world, unavailable control aspects of the world. You don't actually communicate with the world. And exactly the theological education is education for seeing the world in another way. It's education also through praxis. It's theology is also practical discipline, not only theological. So that you see, for instance, if you're a Christian theologian, that you see world as a God's creation, and as such unavailable in every aspect. This is what is the sense of Christian theological education, that you are able to see it in this, let's say, for Christian view, proper way. And then on this basis, I think you can also see the value of interpersonal communication and the somehow, let's say, transgress this efficacy paradigm and attitude. Okay.
Thank you very much. I see that we will go into the somewhat religious or theological world also with our next presentation. Stepan Stivic will present us his paper, Technological Salvation, Neuralink's campaign through the lens of religious symbolism, which I look forward to, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all? Okay, perfectly. So let us start. I would like to begin with a simple religious question. So, who is the one who makes the blind see, the deaf hear, and the lame walk? From the religious perspective, precisely in the Christian theology, biblical theology, the answer has been clear. This is the work, these are the deeds of the Messiah. But today, similar promises are no longer found only in sacred texts, they are increasingly present in technological narratives. In this paper, I explored the shift through a specific case of Neuralink company and the term technological salvation. My focus here is not primarily ethical evaluation. I will not assess whether Neuralink is good or bad. Instead, I ask what kind of story is Neuralink telling and why does it seem so powerful and influential? So, for the beginning, what is Neuralink? Neuralink is a neurotechnological company founded by Elon Musk, 2016. Its goal is to create a direct interface between the human brain and computers. The device is small, implanted in the brain, and capable of reading and stimulating neural activity. Recent trials show patient controlling computers and communicating through thoughts with computers. Neuralink is based on a brain-computer interface technology that enables direct communication between the brain and the external device. Its implant, about the size of a coin, use ultra-thin wires with electrodes to both monitor and stimulate neural activity in a bi-directional way. The project assumes that human thoughts are entirely reducible to neural processes and therefore readable through technology. It also views the brain as a system that can be technologically optimized and repaired through electronic intervention. Why Neuralink stands out? From a technological standpoint, Neuralink does not represent something fundamentally novel or revolutionary advance. We can find various companies engaged in the development of the same or very similar technology. These are companies that entered the field of neural implant development much earlier. So in short, Neuralink is not alone, and similar technologies have existed for decades. So why do we all know Neuralink, but not about several other similar companies? The answer is not technology. The answer is narrative. The answer lies primarily in the marketing model upon which Neuralink builds its promotional strategy. It must be acknowledged that at this stage, we are still not speaking about literally public sale of a product, but rather the sale of an idea. What Neuralink sales or promises? Musk has announced two primarily promises goals: restoring sight to those born blind and helping patients with spinal cord injuries regain the ability to move. Musk also believes that eventually everyone will develop various neurological issues, and this is where the product developed by Neuralink will find its broader application. On another occasion, he specifies the normalization of their neurological issue more precisely, such as memory loss, hearing loss, blindness, addiction, stroke, brain damages, and so on. Additionally, disease and disorders such as autism, depression, schizophrenia, and obesity are also mentioned. Initially, Neuralink is presented as a medical device company, but its underlying mission is much more broad. Quotation: creating a generalized brain interface to restore autonomy to those with unmet medical needs today and unlock human potential tomorrow. Or, quoting, to restore independence and improve lives. So, if we consider the Neuralink's defined mission, it is eventually that usability of the brain implant is intended to be extensive. Dr. McDonald's, the lead neurosurgeon at Neuralink, explained the company's long-term vision. The goal is the full expansion of human cognition into artificial intelligence without limitation, enabling unrestricted communication and the interconnection of human minds. So in short, a Neuralink product presents itself as primarily as a medical device for restoring movement, vision, and communication, but its vision goes further, enhancing cognition and connecting human minds with artificial intelligence. So it's not just a therapy, this is transformation of human condition. So about religious symbolism, Neuralink combines marketing orientation and relationship orientation in its public strategy. That means that it defines concrete user needs, such as communication for paralyzed person, and promotes its technology through educational contents and public demonstration. At the same time, it builds long-term trust through transparency, patient stories, community engagement, and Elon Musk charismatic leadership. In doing so, Neuralink does not merely market a medical device. It promotes a transformative narrative. The company employs a symbolic, almost spiritual marketing logic where technological advancement represents liberation from human fragility. My claim is that Neuralink use Jesus Christ as a marketing model, something similar as a Bernays third-party endorsement model. Religious symbolism is used to lend the Neuralink implant legitimacy, credibility, and emotional weight, much like when a brand employs scientists or celebrities to endorse its project. The implicit message is, I offer you what no other human can give you. So something about gospel parallels. In the Gospels, the signs of Messiah are clear. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, the deaf hear. There are numerous places where this parallel becomes evident. What is more important to say that these are signs of a new reality in New Testament. Now compare this to Neuralink's promises, restoring sight and so on. The parallel is striking. A key compilation text is from Matthew 11, but from a theological perspective, the question that precedes the passage can serve to deepen the understanding of the religious symbolism appropriate by Elon Musk's PR strategy. The question is, I'm quoting, when John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else? So for the conclusion, Neuralink combines problem-solving marketing with trust-building communication. It presents clear solution while using storytelling, transparency, and Elon Musk person to build long-term belief in its mission. At the same time, it implicitly draws on a third-party endorsement model, borrowing the authority and symbolic power of messianic narrative from New Testament. Concerning the term technological salvation, in the Christian tradition, miracles are not perceived to have the goal in itself. This applies both to the miracles of Messiah and to all other miracles in the past. The miracles, they point beyond themselves. In the technological narrative, more precisely in this very example, the miracle or the miracles becomes the end in itself. What is particularly noteworthy is the context that it reveals a reconfiguration of horizon of hope, a shift from salvation understood as something transcendent, rearticulate within a technical framework. This is particularly important to emphasize, given that it concerns a huge company and individuals who exert significant influence on social, cultural, political, and even religious narratives. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stivic. I think it is very telling that we are approaching a conclusion of this topic with a very religious themed contribution. I think it is telling in a sense that we cannot avoid talking in religious or theological terms about those very present issues. Since we are slowly running out of time, but I think given that as far as I know, there's no coming new panel, maybe we can have another few minutes. I would like to invite all the participants, if somebody has a question or a comment, would like to highlight something that hasn't yet been properly emphasized, to do so. I think even before, I think topic is so interesting that it is calling for a next conference already right now. But nevertheless, let's take another 5 minutes if you're okay with this. And if any questions are here, please feel free to share them, and or just reflections maybe. If not, then I would just say that that maybe what hasn't been so much outlined is one topic that I found could be addressed is there a difference, because we're talking about education, between, let's say, technical education and education in humanities, since maybe technical education is more has to do with efficiency, but humanities, it's more about forming also the whole of human person. Is there any efficiency in that difference in that respect? If anybody has some thought, feel free to share. Otherwise, we will slowly close down our panel. Professor Žalic, maybe.
Yeah, I already touched this topic about the uncontrollability, or more technically, unavailability of the world. And yeah, I think that, what is the problem with, let's put it, religious people, if speak for instance, religious people are usually realists, epistemical and ontological realists, metaphysical. That means that they believe that the fundamental cause and source, and also the measure of all things, is the reality that is independent of human being. God, for instance, in theistic religions, is independent of any human being. So in this sense, religious persons are mostly realists. Realism in the sense in believing on human independent reality, which is the deciding reality, which is also the more. And on the other side, you have a controllability attitude, and the partisans and of this attitude say that everything, every reality is humanly constructed, is essentially humanly influenced. And a lot of people from technological field are inclined, due to the amazing achievements of techniques and technology, to this. And in this sense, a religion and religious attitude is very important, maybe the most important barrier or defender against this controllability attitude. And in this sense, this is first step. And in this sense, secondly, I think that field of artificial intelligence needs regulation. You know, European Union is maybe the most important agent in proclaiming this need. And for instance, President Trump is one of the most important denier or even fighter against any regulation. So in this sense, and in this sense, also religion, I think the religious attitude could be very important support. And I think that religious people, from their basic view, should be basically more oriented to this regulation attitude. I think that a religious attitude and denial of every regulation doesn't fit very good together. That this is somehow inconsistent position. So this, I think this religious realism, in the sense I described or outlined, is very important sociological and moral factor in shaping our right and measured attitude to our techniques. We religious people are not, also sociologically, empirically researchers are not against technology. Not just the top of the churches. Also the ordinary people. Not, but you know, regulation, and I think this is somehow consistent for religious people who are realists. Maybe this one.
Thank you. I think if there's any urgent comment, we'll allow for it. But otherwise, I would really sincerely thank all contributors for this discussion. I believe we all see that we can. It's a very urgent and important discussion, and I believe maybe also both Alma Mater Europea and Faculty of Theology can organize something in a similar way also in the near future. So I'm looking forward for this discussion. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice week. Thank you.
We would like to thank you also for chairing this session, and wish you a lot of success in the future life and also cooperation with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.